The Central Organization of Trade Unions and NHIF have finally struck a deal that will allow the insurer to raise contributions for Kenyan workers to a maximum of 1,700 shillings per month.
In return, the NHIF shall offer an enhanced benefits package, including outpatient services, surgery, and even cover sexually transmitted diseases.
Our senior Coast reporter, Ferdinand Omondi, breaks down this grand deal.
After 2 days of deliberations on how to improve health insurance, KOTU and NHIF have finally come to an agreement. KOTU will approve increased monthly contributions in return for a greatly improved benefit package from NHIF.
It will be no longer a fund, it will be a scheme. Yeah, a scheme is attractive. A scheme is not a place where you can walk in and walk out with an aim of collecting funds without accountability.
The lowest contributor to NHIF shall pay 150 shillings, up from 30, while the highest rate will be 1,700 shillings, up from 320. Among the enhanced benefits package is the introduction of outpatient cover, which will include consultation, treatment, chronic diseases like cancer, and cover for sexually transmitted diseases.
Treatment of STDs, but we want to encourage young people and people who are old like us, avoiding too much to contract STDs. Be very little bit careful.
The enhanced inpatient cover will cater for all general medical and surgical care, including intensive and high dependency units, X-ray and pathology, radiology services, and blood transfusion, among others. KOTU envisions that once the new deal is fully operational, workers would have no need for private medical cover, a message that is likely to rattle private insurers. The union has finally agreed to get its workers to rally behind NHIF after getting guarantees of reforms in the health provider and sealing of loopholes which have previously bled the insurer of millions of shillings.
Under my watch, and we have agreed as a board, and we've sensitized the management on this, and everybody is in agreement that we will not allow any corrupt practice in the fund.
The government's vision of providing universal health care, however, remains unresolved, with KOTU insisting that the state must make a significant contribution to the NHIF kitty before such a rollout, not using members' money to offer services to non-members. The union had challenged the previous increase gazetted in 2010, which had set the new rates at between 1,000 and 2,000 shillings. KOTU is now set to drop the court case and present the new resolutions to the union's executive board for approval within a fortnight. Ferdinand Omondi, KTN, Mombasa.
Let's go now to one of our top stories tonight. Tonight we put the spotlight on revelations and horror stories of Kenyans who've just returned from Saudi Arabia, where they had been lured with offers of well-paying domestic jobs. Saudi Arabia has historically been seen as a haven for job seekers, but domestic abuse is not considered illegal in the Arab country, and strict guardianship laws restrict the movement of women. This could explain why some 50 women recently returned to Kenya bearing scars, horror stories, and not a penny to their name. KTN's Edith Kimani has the details.
In June of 2012, the Kenyan government banned Kenyans from going to the Middle East as domestic workers. A year later, 800 Kenyans were rescued from Saudi jails. By November of 2013, the government had lifted the ban, and Kenyans, desperate for work, jumped at the opportunity to find work elsewhere. Some, like Naomi, came back to be buried. Others, considered the fortunate ones, came back alive. But their stories paint a picture of anything but fortune.
Kutoka Wagila nikapelekwa place ingine kwa ofisi. Sasa tukafungiwa, nikakuta Wakenya wamejaa huko kwa ofisi. Kulikuwa na over 30 Kenyans huko wamefungiwa, wamekaa some months huko. Sasa nilikuwa na simu, nikapigia agent kumuuliza kwani nilikuwa mimi naenda wapi. Akasema kaa nimefika place yenye nimefika.
Kwa wale wa baba wa pale Saudia ni watu sijui vile wameumbwa. Ni yule baba anakuja ako na gun na nakuambia ni lazima ulale na yeye. Kwa hivyo akiwekelea hapa itakubidi juu uko kwa nchi ya wenyewe, unaona. Na pale ukishikana mama akijua ile ati umeenda umelala na yule bwana yake, wewe ndio narudishia makosa.
Yenye walinipeleka kwa nyumba, mimi kufanya kazi huko, ndio nikuta nguo za msichana fulani, sijui alikuwa mgani, zimejaa damu hivi. Nikapigia agent wangu nikamwambia, sasa mnipeleka hata please, mimi watu ni kama wamekufa juu damu imejaa kwa nyumba hivi, na nimekuta credit ya Safaricom kuonyesha kulikuwa na mtu wa Kenya huko. Hiyo wiki ya 3 venye nimekaa huko wiki ya 3, ndio nilienda akanipatia kazi huko kwa kuku, nifagie huko kwa kuku, ndio nikaona kulikuwa na watu wamezikwa huko ndani, watu 2.
Ni vile nilienda hiyo nyumba, nilishikwa na mashida ya njaa. Huyu mtu ananifanyisha kazi, hakuna chakula. Sasa vile niliwaambia mimi nasikia njaa, wanakula wanakubakishia hiyo chakula. Hiyo ndio wanataka ukure. Mimi nawaambia mimi kwetu hii chakula tunapeaga umbwa na kuku. Sisi hatukuragi chakula yenye imekurua mtu anakubakishia.
Tunaomba serikali iingilie kati ndio wasichana wetu watolewe pale, turudishiwe hapa. Na wao wanafuata kama ni watu 1000 wametoka Kenya. Wakienda wao wanafuatilia hao watu wamemaliza contract, wameenda wangapi, wamerudi wangapi. Juu hapo hii harakati ya hii kuenda na kurudi, serikali haifuati na ndio watu wetu wanauawa. Ni watu wengi wetu wa Kenya wameuawa pale.
The Kenyan government is reported to have inspected over 300 labor recruitment agencies last year. But the all too common stories from the Middle East extend well beyond Saudi Arabia. KTN has on numerous occasions showed the deplorable conditions Kenyans are willing to live in while in the Middle East in search of the elusive shilling. For a few, the dream pays off. Not for these women, however, and certainly not for Naomi. Edith Kimani, KTN.
Harrowing experiences from those 50 girls who've come back from Saudi Arabia. And the question that people keep asking, keep on asking is, how is it that so many people keep on getting into the same situations over and over and over again, and yet this is not the first situation? Now, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has actually given a response, and Karanja Kibicho, who is the PS in that ministry, says that is what they will all say when they get into trouble. Our efforts to get them to register with us before they go get no response. This is after some of these women said that the government and the Kenyan embassy in Saudi Arabia is not doing anything to help Kenyans who are in those countries, or the Middle Eastern countries. And the government says basically that is the response that you will always get. They have tried to get these people to register when they go to those countries, but they get no response with that. And the Foreign Affairs Ministry also says that the embassies are always at hand to help whenever Kenyans show up. This is a matter that requires cooperation from all Kenyans going to work in foreign countries. Just register with our missions. The ministry is very clear on this. Just register with our missions. And I was talking to a lady who is in Dubai today, and she said that most Kenyans who are in those countries don't even know where the Kenyan consulate is in the countries that they are going to register with. And Nancy, this is a big problem, because if you do not know where you need to get your help from, who is going to help you? Who is going to help you? So, and she says, she also said something very important. Kenyans are using agencies to go to these countries. She said that is a bad idea, because these agencies are going to charge you an arm and a leg, and you will still not get the services that you require to get when you're in those countries. And it is a strange place to be in.
Right, so clearly a very huge problem. But we want to ask you this evening on our big Q, which is coming up shortly, whether you think that the Kenyan job seekers are actually to blame for the suffering that they go through in Saudi Arabia.
The Big Q, in association with Kenya Power.
All right, so that brings us to a big question, and as Nancy said, we're asking, are Kenyan job seekers to blame for the suffering they go through in Saudi Arabia? We have seen these cases over and over again. This is not the first time that we're seeing this. So are Kenyan job seekers to blame for the suffering that they go through in Saudi Arabia?
You can give us your thoughts by tweeting us at Kachingira, at Wilson_Mburu, and at KTN Kenya. You can also send an SMS to 22155. When you do that, do remember to begin with a yes or no, so that we can add your opinion to our poll results, which we'll have for you at the end of the bulletin tonight.
Remember that we are using
Switch, wasiliana na marketing officer wa Kenya Power katika ofisi yoyote ya Kenya Power iliyo karibu nawe. Upate maelezo jinsi unavyoweza kupata stima kwa urahisi.
As I said, the hashtag we're using is modern day slavery.
We look forward to hearing your views on that. But right now in studio with us is Hussein Khalid. Now, he is the director of Haki Africa, and he's been working severally with cases like these where people are going to look for greening pastures in places like Saudi Arabia and actually coming back very disappointed. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me, Nancy.
And you also were the executive director of Muhuri, which is Muslims for Human Rights.
Yes.
And you did work with these cases. So you've been working with these cases for a long time.
For a couple of years now, yeah.
Now, we've seen today 50 women coming back home very disappointed. But if we go back to 2012, the government put a freeze on recruitment of Kenyans to these Middle Eastern countries. It was lifted in November 2013. Fast forward today, we're still seeing the same situation.
Yes.
How is it that we're still in this cycle? Why have we failed to control this problem?
I think, first of all, we need to understand the problem and get to know exactly why are Kenyans moving to seek for jobs in foreign countries. The problems that we are having within our communities, particularly at the coast and many other parts of the country, is that there are no jobs. There is no employment, such that people are so desperate that they're willing to risk their lives, even though they hear of horror stories, people coming back in coffins and so on and so forth. So that's the first point. How do we make sure that we are able to provide the necessary support for the youth to be able to earn an honest living within their own country? But having said that, as you've very rightfully put it, this is a growing problem. We've had these problems for many years. We've had people who've died. We've had families that have actually, lost their loved ones, never to see them again. And in 2012, after a lot of, hue and cry from particularly civil society organizations at that point in time, the Muslims for Human Rights, Muhuri, we managed to get a freeze on travel. And the freeze was actually meant to give the key stakeholders, particularly the Foreign Affairs Ministry, the Labor Ministry, the agencies, and civil society, time to actually look at and develop a policy that will guide some of this travel. Unfortunately, that was not done. And the problem was that the agencies kept on, putting pressure. And of course, the community members too, that they need to go, they need to find ways of earning a living. And of course, the ban was lifted. What we are having now, again, is the same situation replaying itself. At the center of this whole mess are actually the agencies. We have agencies that are operating without, regulation from the government. It's unfortunate to hear the remarks that are being made by the principal secretary that you need to go and register. But how do you register? For example, in most of these countries, the moment you land, your passport is taken away, your telephone, your mobile is taken away, you have no means of communicating, you can't even walk in the streets, because if you walk in the streets without any legal documentation, then you'll be arrested. So I think there's a lot of ignorance from the side of the government. They don't truly understand the problems that Kenyans go through. And it's not just Saudi Arabia, it's the Gulf. We have cases from Far East, China and other places. We have cases from even Africa. I remember there was a time we dealt with a case where a Kenyan was killed in South Sudan. So it's a big issue, and the government must do something about it.
You've talked about the agencies. Last year, about 300 recruitment agencies were inspected. Did that inspection not yield any fruit?
Definitely not. If we have 50 Kenyan women who've returned home today, very bitter about what they went through, that's very clear. It did not do anything. What we need are proper mechanisms that will ensure that, first of all, these agencies are registered and actually monitored. No person, no agency should be allowed to send any individual before informing the foreign missions that are there. If I'm an employee and I've been sent to Saudi Arabia in some far-off city, say Dammam or Jeddah, the embassy is in Riyadh, I cannot make my way to that place, but I pass through Kenyan borders. When this visa is stamped in Kenya, the Kenyan mission is aware, the Saudi Arabian High Commission issues the visa. There are very many ways that we can actually get this done. When you get picked by agencies, most of these people have not even been to Nairobi, let alone to get the Kenyan mission in Saudi Arabia or Dubai or somewhere like that. So how do we expect them to actually go and register at a Kenyan mission in a country they have never been to. I think it shows that much more needs to be done. The government needs to learn more about this problem. So if people are in fact going to Saudi Arabia without using any kind of proper channels, how can the government track them? How will they know that someone is in Saudi Arabia and they have a problem if they never actually went to a government agency or even registered? That's a very good question, Nancy. And the answer is these agencies that are sending these people, if they were registered, if they were reporting to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, if they were reporting, say, on a monthly basis or quarterly basis that we've been able to send so and so to this and this place, that would be able to solve the solution. So we have to emphasize that we must regulate these agencies because they should know where each and every Kenyan is that they have sent to any country. So we may be able to regulate the agencies, but even when they get there, it does seem that this problem is rather endemic. I mean, we've talked about the laws in Saudi Arabia not actually favoring better treatment of people who go there. There's a long tradition of slavery. So is there any guarantee at all that, when they get there, the agencies there and the organizations there will support them? Yeah, well, the best we can do is take care of our own, first of all, in our own country. I mean, Saudi Arabia is a sovereign state. We can't go there and tell them you have to pass this law or that law. So maybe we should tell people not to go at all. We have done that so many times. We have received people back. And those same people who've come back actually came to our office to report that they're leaving again, barely 3 weeks after they came from horrific stories. And then when you ask them, why are you doing this? They tell you, I have 4 children to feed. What am I supposed to do? I don't have a job. So these are stories that are real, and we must make sure that we protect our brothers and sisters, particularly the sisters who undergo so much torture at the hands of their employers. I just want to bring in very, very quickly, Kabete MP George Muchayan, Kiambu County Women Representative, are working on a bill. Do you have any optimism about this bill to protect people who actually go to places like the Middle East? It's long overdue. And we support that move 100%. What we need to ensure is that we have the stakeholders involved. Let us also listen from the people who are actually coming from some of these experiences. Because if we draft a law that actually does not take into account the experiences of these people, then it will be an exercise in futility. Right. So we recommend that, yes, we must have this law. It's what we've called for so long, and let's ensure that the agencies that are dealing with these cases are properly regulated. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Thank you so much for having me. That was Hussein Khalid. He is the director of Haki Africa. Don't forget, you can join that conversation on Twitter. Use the hashtag #ModernDaySlavery. Now, as we move on, a parent has sued Nairobi's Rusinga School for suspending her 9-year-old son because of his dreadlocked hair. According to Jacqueline Kamau, her son has had dreadlocks since he was just 18 months old. Her son joined Rusinga Kindergarten in September 2010 with no objection from the administration. She further argued through her lawyer Doreen Mutunga that the school rules do not restrict children from having dreadlocks even at the preparatory level. In a sworn affidavit, Kamau says that on September 3rd this year, her son was dismissed by the school over the hair and thereafter denied entry to the school premises. She was told to pick a refund of the school fees from the bursar's office as the school did not wish to continue its relationship with her son. Kamau says that the school is discriminating against her son based on his gender, which is contrary to Article 27 of the Constitution of Kenya. The case was heard before Justice Isaac Lenaola. All attempts to get a reaction from the Rusinga schools bore no fruit.
Now to some politics now. What really transpired at the meeting between President Uhuru Kenyatta and governors pushing for a referendum? According to sources who did not wish to be named, the heated meeting ended in a stalemate after the chairman of the Governors' Council stood his ground on why he is leading the push. KTN Samugina has more.
In a stormy meeting at State House, the president was uncompromising on the Council of Governors Chair Isaac Ruto for openly undermining his administration and the presidency. Uhuru is said to have rapped the Bomet governor for his defiance. But the controversial governor, who was among 5 others, shifted blame to Parliament for approving laws negating devolution gains. There was no concrete resolution, with governors steadfast to push on with their signature collection launch tomorrow in Kakamega as they leave the negotiation window period open. For Jubilee governors, the push for a referendum ostensibly to increase funding for their counties has turned into a precarious tug of war. While they maintain that they are protecting devolution, the Jubilee hierarchy has not been impressed by their referendum campaigns.
Kama kuna mtu anajua ambaye tunaenda na inazaa matunda ambaye ni pesa, hata mimi mnionyeshe huyo mti.
We have taken a position. If you are not happy with that position, the best thing you can do is to write a resignation letter, and then you go back to the people and ask for votes. And if you are voted as an independent candidate, nobody will bother you with party issues.
But fighting back, the chairman of the Council of Governors, Isaac Ruto, a Jubilee figurehead, has stamped the president's calls for his resignation as unnecessary intimidation.
Devolution ni haki ya wananchi wa Kenya. Na mtu yeyote asithubutu kutuambia eti anatupatia. Ati lazima tubie ndio atupatie. Hiyo ni kweli ama?
But is President Uhuru Kenyatta's tough talk backed by law, or is the president simply trying to whip the Jubilee county bosses to toe the majority coalition's position?
It can only be a party binding a governor on an issue if that issue is not an issue which involved his personal rights as an elected leader, where he can elect to say that when it comes to this issue, in my view, we need an amendment to the constitution.
Political parties within the Jubilee coalition signed a document called the Fidelity Deed. This Fidelity Deed binds them to the position that has been taken by the coalition. If any member of the coalition wants to take a position to the contrary, then the obvious thing to do for them is to actually resign.
It is not clear what further action Jubilee will take against its dissenting governors, or whether or not other Jubilee governors will follow Ruto's lead.
Genuineness of the push by the governors for referendum can easily be lost in the politics of the day.
The tug of war continues, and the governors remain relentless in their referendum drive as the president opens a new channel to negotiate his troops out of the nasty combat that is in-house rivalry. Samogina, KTN.
Let's go to Kakamega now. And glaring divisions today became evident as Western leaders weighed on the referendum debate.
Yes, this was during a mass for 8 people who perished in last week's Grizzly Road accident along the Kisumu-Kakamega Road.
And as Francis Ontuoma now reports, the event exposed a new scheme that may further complicate efforts to rally Western Kenya leaders to speak with one political voice.
Somber mood as 8 bodies are ferried into the Buhungu Stadium. Indeed, a heart-wrenching experience for families who are trying to come to terms with the harsh experience of last week. One by one, mourners passed by the caskets viewing the remains of their loved ones. In what has become typical of funerals in Western Kenya, the politicians were at hand with the issues of the day. The ongoing debate on referendum, it appears will be another wedge that will sharply divide the Western nation.
Sisi tunataka pesa zaidi ya 15%. Na hii pesa ambayo tunatafuta, tumechukua mtaalam akaangalia ile budget ya national government na tukapata iko shilingi bilioni 102 ambayo iko national government ambayo tunataka ije hapa mashinani.
Gavana apate pesa yake ile inamwezesha kutengeneza county. MCA wapate yao, wafanye wapi? Kwa wapi? Alafu tuende mbele. Lakini ukienda okoa sijui nini hiyo, mimi siko huko.
The bullfighter Boni Halwale is not leaving anything to chance in his quest to see all governors from Western Kenya pulling in one direction, the Kotsokoa Kenya way. Bungoma Governor Ken Lusaka was on the receiving end of Halwale's wrath.
Ati wewe unaonekana ndio mmoja wao wale 18 wenye wanapinga referendum. Ken Lusaka, wewe sikia. Sikia na usikie vizuri sana. Wewe umekuwa DC, hujajua kufanya siasa.
One speaker after the other exposed the divisions among local leaders, yet again proving that striking one regional chorus will be a tall order for the referendum proponents.
Kwa sababu katiba tunayo wakati huu ya ile tunaendelea nayo, hata implementation yake haijaisha.
Na lazima atatuliwe sasa hivi. Kwa hivyo tunasema referendum ni sasa hivi.
Referendum katiba inasema kutengeneza amendment ya constitution lazima urudi referendum. Kubadilisha tarehe ya katiba lazima urudi referendum.
For a moment, the agenda of the day was lost, and the whole stadium was caught in the sway of politicians. This was the last journey for 8 departed souls of last weekend's accident. They went bringing families here for mourning. But as always, politicians found fertile ground here to throw fisticuffs to each other. This to the amazement of families here. Francis Ontomwa, KTN, Kakamega.
Now, there will be no teachers' strike, at least not yet.
A meeting between the Teachers Service Commission and the two teacher unions, NUT and KUPPET, held today, failed to reach a conclusive agreement on the issues being raised by the teachers.
That's right, and another meeting has now been scheduled for the 30th of September, and many hope that that meeting will rule out the strike option and give this year's candidates a chance to sit their exams and possibly avert what could be a long strike.
Here's Linda Ogutu with the rest of that story.
The government and teachers seemed headed for another confrontation over delayed implementation of a pay deal negotiated last year to end a nationwide strike. The teachers accused the government of not showing its commitment to a collective bargaining agreement that awards them new perks, including housing, responsibility and entertainment allowances. And this morning, it was all systems go.
There are secret details to derail the negotiations. We are more than convinced that the government does not want these negotiations to proceed successfully.
NUT issued a 21-day ultimatum on August 27th for the government to conclude the salary negotiations or face industrial action. NUT had listed 37 items it wants TSC to implement progressively over the years until teachers are remunerated well. Among the issues NUT once addressed are creation of new job groups from the current maximum job group Q to Z, higher house, responsibility and entertainment allowances, and introduction of a township allowance for teachers in urban areas. However, today's meeting came amid an exchange of words between NUT and KUPPET over just who should be in charge of talks with the government on teachers' welfare. NUT's position that KUPPET does not have the necessary membership threshold for recognition by TSC is likely to open new battlefronts and throw the education sector into further disorder.
Wenzetu wa KNUT haja yao haikuwa masumuzo na serikali ili kuwezesha walimu kupata mishahara na marupurupu ambayo tumeuliza.
If no deal is struck on the 30th of September, then the strike could begin at the end of September and spill into October when Form 4 candidates take their Kenya Certificate of Secondary Education exams. Standard 8 candidates sit the exams in November. A similar strike in 2012 caused such disruption that the examinations were put off for a month and the school calendar changed. Linda Ogutu, KTN Prime.
Let's go to some political drama. Hell broke loose in Kisumu County Assembly chambers today when a controversial motion was tabled by member Moses Ochele representing Wawidhi ward. The motion sought to find out why some information discussed in the assembly was allegedly leaked out to the office of the governor. It was alleged that after the MCAs had discussed some issues touching on the county government officials, some 2 MCAs then went to the office of the governor to report the matters. Some members did not take those accusations kindly, leading to a fight. Mombasa Governor Hassan Joho today launched a school milk program for small children in that county.
Yes, the Maziwa 001 project is targeting at least 8,000 children in early childhood development in an effort to keep them focused on education.
And as Ferdinand Omondi now reports, the program brings back the memories of the famous Maziwa ya Nyayo. From us on KTN Prime, have a good night.
Good night.
They came in their thousands at the Mombasa Municipal Stadium to witness the launch of what was once a favorite when most of their parents were in school. School Milk, a project inspired by a research to find out how to keep children in class.
A lot of our pupils and children that go to either ECD or primary schools do not stay in class because they're hungry. And those that stay in many a times do not concentrate because, again, they're hungry.
The county government is targeting 8,000 pupils attending early childhood education. The grand plan is to lay out the school milk program to all primary schools from class 1 to class 6.
In this financial year, we're projecting to reach 6,000 children. We as a county have been able to budget for 2,000 of those children. The County School Milk Trust Fund has actually committed itself to meet the other 4,000.
We're working on ensuring if we can do this as early as the next school term for up to standard 6, we shall do it.
It's a program that the county government hopes will not only nourish the stomachs of thousands of children, but that it will also help them focus on school while striking off hunger as an impediment.
Sisi ambao tulisoma shule tuliambiwa kwamba maziwa iko na karibu kila nutrition. Na kwa hivyo we need a healthy mind to have a healthy society so that we can tukaweza tukahakikisha tumepata yale malengo yetu ya elimu.
This school milk program brings back the memories of the 80s when President Daniel Arap Moi introduced Maziwa ya Nyayo, the original program which targeted all primary school children across the country. It was a mega hit and has since remained one of the lasting legacies of his rule. Joho will be hoping he can replicate the same in Mombasa County, and the looks on the contented faces of these children suggests this may not be a bad idea at all.
The first school milk program was a tremendous success. When it disappeared, those who benefited today can only remember it with nostalgia. But now it is back, at least in Mombasa County, and the parents can only hope that the success of the 80s can now be replicated with the children of today. Ferdinand Omondi, KTN, Mombasa.
Results stretch into 2014 with its full-year loss widening. During the period ended June, the loss before tax grew to 3.4 billion shillings from the 2.24 billion shillings loss last year. The sugar miller attributed this to the huge influx of illegally imported sugar that has brought the entire sector to its knees. Mumias has been rocked by a combination of reduced sugar production, industrial strikes and claims of insider fraud that the board says it is moving to address in an effort to protect shareholder wealth. It, however, wasn't all bad news for Mumias, with output growing by 17%, while revenues grew by 9.4% to 13 billion shillings. Building on this, Mumias plans to invest on a new packaging line to reclaim lost market share.
We're looking at our HR structure. I know it's been reported that we want to retrench 300 people. We're not yet there. I don't know where that information came from in the media. But we are, yes, definitely looking at the whole of our HR structure. We have 1,900 people. We don't need 1,900 people to run Mumias Sugar Company. I will chance, at the risk of being misquoted, that company can run with just about 1,000 people.
Global payment service provider PayPal is reaching out to create more partnerships with local merchants and SMEs as it looks to expand its presence in East Africa. PayPal is hoping to replicate the success it's had with recent partnerships with Equity Bank and national carrier Kenya Airways amid intense competition for virtual payment solutions in the region. Now, I spoke to PayPal's head of business in Africa on the company's growth strategy. Kenya's financial services sector has been a beehive of activity as new technology is deployed into the market to provide payment solutions. Global card merchants MasterCard and Visa have both set up in Kenya to cash in on the increased use of card payment platforms. Not wanting to be left behind, e-commerce solutions provider PayPal is also researching the market to take advantage of growing online payment traffic.
A new focus of ours is actually on the travel industry. So anybody who is a safari tour operator or a hotel or a bed and breakfast, all of their clients come from abroad. So chances are, if it's a European or American or Asian customer, chances are that they have a PayPal account.
In 2013, PayPal partnered with Equity Bank to allow its customers make payments and receive money internationally without sharing their financial or personal information through linking their bank accounts to the electronic payment system. Kenya is currently PayPal's third largest market for electronic transactions in Africa after South Africa and Nigeria.
2 months ago, we announced Nigeria, Ivory Coast, Cameroon, and Zimbabwe. So those are our newest countries where people can open PayPal accounts.
The company is looking for partnership agreements with the likes of Kenya Airways, hotels and banks offering new payment solutions for Kenyans. PayPal's entry comes at a time mobile payment has taken a lion's share of the market but is looking to carve up a niche.
The advantage that PayPal brings that is very hard to replicate is our global presence. So we have 152 million active accounts in over 200 markets around the world. And so this connection of connecting Kenyans to the world and the world to Kenyans.
Joy Doreen Bira, KTN Business. It's been a long 12 years for negotiators from both the East African Community and the European Union who have had to sit and discuss the Economic Partnership Agreement, or EPAs, whose conclusion has looked like a mirage. And just like the mirage, 12 years on, they're still not yet done. But the government says the end is within sight as the clock counts down to the September 30th deadline. We have more.
After a decade of negotiations, the government could finalize the Economic Partnership Agreement talks with the European Union in the 11th hour. With less than a month to go to the deadline, the state says it will hold last-minute talks with the EU to try and conclude negotiations in 2 weeks. But it all boils down to one key issue that the EAC is not willing to budge on.
For taxes, and this is in the interest of the region that we remain firm on it. Because if we are not firm on it, it means that we will become a region that is a producer of raw materials for the EU.
Kibichu says the issue of taxes of export materials is a sovereign issue that cannot be subject to opinions from any other party.
If we sign carelessly, it means that should we want to stabilize our currencies through export taxes, then we have no window of doing that.
Another issue is the fact that Kenya is negotiating in a bloc within the EAC with countries that will not face the same consequences once the deadline lapses. Unlike Kenya, the rest of the countries in the EAC are classified as least developed countries.
Our other brothers and sisters in the region are OLDCs. We are not. To them, it is not as urgent as it is to us.
Kenya is in a race against time to have the EPAs ratified or risk having key exports such as flowers and horticulture attract an import duty to the EU, and many are urging the government to go it alone.
Signing of EPAs must also not kill our hopes of regional integration.
Instead, Kibicho says the government will proceed with the rest of the EAC with a meeting scheduled for East African ministers tomorrow and a planned meeting with the EU officials in Brussels on Monday. Adelaide Chongole, KTN Business.
Ahead of the weekend 62nd edition of the KCB Safari Rally. After a final scrutineering day at the Galleria Shopping Mall today, drivers are eager to take the chase into real action on Friday. The rally will be flagged off at the KICC grounds tomorrow.
Drivers and navigators were on Thursday morning in a final rush to put the last touches to their rally cars ahead of this weekend's Nanyuki Safari Rally. Scrutineering, a requirement by the world governing body FIA, oversees that all rally cars are inspected for safety before they are allowed to participate in any rally sport.
I understand that you need to make sure that the weight is as accurate as possible, depending on the class the rally car is in. And we're very confident that our machine will give the accuracy that is needed.
It is important to know the weight of the car if it conforms to the class that it has entered. And that evens out the playing field for all the drivers.
All cars receive scrutiny for compliance with the FIA rules, in addition to fitting of transponders for real-time satellite tracking. Drivers and the navigators are aware that the route will be challenging enough.
This year the competitives are all on private land, like ranches in Laikipia area. So that is a new experience.
The rally will be flagged over the KICC ground from 10 a.m. on Friday before wide-ranging conditions start at the super special stage at Niga, where avid Nairobi rally fans are cautioned to keep a distance and can catch a glimpse of the Friday's action.
It's a competitive stage. We will be going flat out there tomorrow morning, starting from around 10 onwards. Please all welcome there. You will see real action.
Yeah, I'd like to wish all the contestants good luck.
Gary Changes from Ivory Coast, Zambian Mohamed Essa, Balev Chaga, Jasprit and Carl Flash Tundo will be eager to get maximum points and finish on the podium. Moses Wahisi, KTN Sports.
And over 20 banks and financial institutions have confirmed participation to the 30th edition of the Interbank Games, set to kick off on the 13th of this month at selected venues across the capital. Participants will contest for glory in 17 disciplines, including football, basketball, squash, badminton, volleyball, and athletics, among others.
We have a good entry this time round, and it will be a vet lab tomorrow. We get very good fellows who can even represent this country and build them, expose them even to East African region. Those are still plans that are underway.